Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. I was driving my rig down Route 77 one late autumn evening. The sky was a dull, bruised gray, clouds hanging low over the asphalt. The road was mostly empty, except for the occasional truck or car. I had been on the highway for nearly 12 hours straight, hauling a load from West Virginia to Ohio, and my eyelids were heavy. The fog started rolling in as I passed a stretch of forested hills. It was thick and white, curling around the truck's headlights, swallowing the road ahead. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield, trying to keep a steady line. I had been driving these roads for years, but something about that stretch always made me uneasy. I first saw it out of the corner of my eye, moving along the tree line. At first I thought it was a deer, or maybe a stray dog. My brain tried to rationalize it because I had been awake too long, but it moved upright. Tall, muscular. Its gait was awkward, yet fast, and it didn't resemble any human walking I had ever seen. I slammed the brakes, and the rig shuddered to a stop. My hands gripped the steering wheel. The thing paused on the side of the road. Its eyes reflected my headlights, yellow and gleaming. Its head was like a dog's, elongated, but the shoulders, arms, and legs were all human-like. I could see its muscles tense beneath dark fur. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination, that I had been driving too long. But then it ran. It didn't just run like a human or a dog. It moved with a fluid, terrifying grace, crossing the road in a few strides. My heart slammed in my chest. I hit the horn. The creature stopped mid-stride, head tilting, watching me. It didn't care about the sound. It didn't care about me. It only watched. I started the truck and kept moving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was following me. I dared not glance in the mirrors. Every shadow in the fog felt alive. Every flicker along the roadside made me jump. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. Every turn of the highway, every mile marker, seemed to stretch the forest and fog endlessly. Occasionally, I thought I saw it on the shoulder again. Just one glimpsed all upright, glinting eyes but when I tried to focus. It vanished by midnight. I was gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. My radio was dead. No music, no static, just silence, except for the engine and tires on asphalt. Then came the sound of footsteps, not from inside the truck, from outside. Long, deliberate steps, matching the rhythm of my speed. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. The rig was moving too fast for anything human to keep pace on foot. Yet the sound was unmistakable. I hit the horn again. Tap, tap, tap. Faster now. It was keeping up. I took a deep breath and forced myself to drive faster, accelerating past 65, 70 miles per hour. The tapping continued, rhythmically keeping time with my speed. Finally, a curve appeared ahead. I blinked, and in the corner of my eye, I saw it leap. It jumped over the guardrail on the right side of the road. Its arms, impossibly long, gripped the concrete before it swung its body onto the asphalt. For a second, it moved with a speed that made my stomach twist. I slammed on the brakes. My rig skidded slightly, tires screaming. I looked into the fog and headlights of my truck. There it was, standing in the middle of the lane, tall, black, impossibly muscular, its yellow eyes fixed on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My instincts screamed at me to get out, to leave, but I was trapped in the cab. Then it vanished, just like that. 1 second it was there, the next, nothing. I drove cautiously for miles, checking mirrors obsessively. Every shadow along the fog-drenched trees made my chest tighten, but the highway was empty. Eventually, I made it to a rest stop. I parked, shaking. I locked all doors, leaving the headlights on. I tried calling dispatch, my family, anyone who would answer. Nothing. No signal. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting, listening for the sound of footsteps or growls. Morning finally came. Sunlight piercing the fog. I left as quickly as I could, but even in daylight, when I told myself I was safe, I couldn't forget the smell. Musky, sharp, like wet fur and earth. It lingered in the cab, clinging to the seats. I tried telling myself it was a wild animal, maybe a bear that had somehow stood upright. Rational explanations failed. No bear moves that fast, that silently, that deliberately. No bear stands like a man, watches a truck, then vanishes into fog without a sound. Months later, I heard stories from other drivers. Others had seen the same thing along Route 77. Tall, upright, yellow eyes. Moving like a man but faster, stronger, impossible. Some had lost trailers mysteriously. Others said their dogs ran from the truck for no reason. I stopped driving at night after that. I refused long hauls. Sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night and smell it. That same musky wet fur smell, even in my apartment in the city. And every time, I remember the yellow eyes. The way it leaped, the way it waited. It is still out there, watching the roads, watching the trucks, watching the drivers who dare to be alone at night. And I know, if I ever get back on Route 77 after dark, it will be waiting for me. I grew up in a rural area where farms stretched for miles, and the roads between them were long, narrow, and poorly lit. Everyone owned dogs, big ones, tough ones, the kind raised to guard property and chase off predators. Those dogs would bark at anything that moved, except one stretch of road. There was a farm road locals avoided after dark, not officially. No signs, just a quiet agreement. Trucks would speed through it. Kids were warned not to walk it alone, and every dog, without exception, refused to go near it at night. I learned why one October evening, when my truck broke down there. It was just after sunset, when the engine died. No warning, no sputtering, just silence. My phone had no signal. The nearest house was over a mile away. I figured I would walk. I stepped out of the truck and immediately felt it. That pressure in the air. Like the land itself was paying attention. The woods lining the road were thick and close, branches arching overhead like ribs. I started walking. About 5 minutes in, I heard something pacing me in the trees to my right. Not crashing through brush, not hiding either, just moving steadily. Matching my stride, I stopped. It stopped. I swallowed and forced myself to keep walking. Then came the sound of claws on dirt, slow, heavy, intentional. The smell followed, wet fur and iron, strong enough to make my stomach turn. I told myself it was a wolf. Then it stepped onto the road behind me. I heard the weight hit the ground, one footstep, then another. I turned slowly. It stood in the road like it belonged there. It was taller than my truck, broad chest, thick arms, covered in coarse dark fur that caught the last light of day. Its legs bent backward like a dog's, but it balanced upright with terrifying ease. Its head was canine, but wrong. The snout was shorter, the jaw wider, the teeth thick and yellowed. Its eyes were locked on me. Amber, intelligent.com. It took a step forward. I raised my hands without thinking. My voice came out shaking. I am just trying to leave. The thing tilted its head slightly. Listening then, it did something I still do not understand. It sniffed the air, then glanced past me down the road. Its ears flattened. A low growl rumbled from its chest, not aimed at me, but at something deeper in the woods. Another growl answered closer. The Dogman looked back at me and bared its teeth, not in a threat, in warning. It stepped toward the trees and struck a trunk with one clawed hand. It splintered. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Then it vanished into the forest. I did not wait to see what it was warning me about. I ran. I reached the nearest farmhouse breathless and pounding on the door. The farmer opened it, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without questions. When I told him where my truck broke down, his jaw tightened. "You walked that road alone?" he asked. I nodded. He shook his head slowly. "You are lucky." I asked him what lived out there. He did not answer directly. He just said, "Sometimes the dogs know who owns the road at night." When we went back for my truck the next morning, there were tracks in the dirt. Large, deep, clawed. They crossed the road once, and then turned back into the woods. I still drive past that road, sometimes, and I never see dogs outside after dark, not anywhere near it. I was working night security at a warehouse complex on the edge of a wooded area when this happened. The job was boring most nights. Empty lots, motion lights, occasional deer wandering too close to the fence. I had been there long enough to recognize normal sounds and movements. This was not normal. The warehouse backed up to a thick stretch of forest that locals said used to be hunting land before the city expanded. During the day, it looked harmless. At night it became something else entirely. The darkness between the trees felt dense, like it swallowed light. Around 2 in the morning, the motion sensors on the far fence tripped. I checked the monitors. Nothing visible. No movement. The lights flicked on, illuminating the fence line and the first few rows of trees. Everything looked still. Then the smell hit me through the open guard shack window. Wet fur, strong and sour, like an animal that had been soaked in rain and left to rot slightly. It made my eyes water. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The air felt heavy, silent. No insects, no distant traffic, just my own breathing and the crunch of gravel under my boots. I swept the beam along the fence. That was when something stood up. At first I thought it was a bear crouched low. Then it straightened fully, rising higher than the fence itself. It stood on 2 legs. The flashlight beam shook as it climbed up the thing's body. Thick legs bent backward, like a dog's. A powerful torso covered in dark fur. Broad shoulders that rolled slightly as it adjusted its stance. Then the light reached its face. A canine head stared back at me. Wide jaw, thick teeth visible even with its mouth closed. Ears pointed forward, eyes reflecting back at me with a dull amber shine. Those eyes were not animal eyes. They were focused. I froze. The thing did not move. It simply stood there at the edge of the trees, half in shadow, half in the harsh white light of the flood lamps. Its chest rose and fell slowly. I whispered without meaning to, "What are you?" The Dogman took a step forward. The ground vibrated. Gravel shifted. I felt the impact in my feet. I stepped back instinctively. My heel caught on something and I nearly fell. The Dogman stopped immediately, as if reacting to my loss of balance rather than threatening me. It tilted its head, then a low growl rolled out of its chest. Not loud, not aggressive. It sounded like a warning meant for something else. From deeper in the forest came a response. Another growl. Louder, closer. The Dogman in front of me turned its head slightly toward the sound, ears flattening. Its lips curled back just enough to show more teeth. It looked back at me one last time, and then it slammed one clawed hand into the fence. The metal screamed as it bent inward. The impact shook the entire line. Then the creature dropped back into the trees, moving with terrifying speed and silence for something so large. I ran back into the guard shack and locked the door, hands shaking so badly I could barely manage it. I watched the monitors for the rest of the shift. Nothing else appeared. At sunrise, I walked the fence line with my supervisor. The metal bars were bent where the thing struck them. Deep gouges marked the steel. No machinery could have done that. I quit the job that same day. Weeks later, I drove past the complex and noticed new fencing had been installed, taller, thicker, reinforced. The forest behind it looked the same as ever, but sometimes, when I drive that road at night, I see the motion lights flick on in sequence, and for just a second, I swear, I see a tall shape standing calmly at the tree line, watching, making sure we remember where we are allowed to build and where we are not. I was 16 when this happened, old enough to know the woods, but still young enough to believe I understood them. My family lived near a long stretch of state forest, the kind with creeks cutting through ravines and narrow trails only locals used. My father hunted there, I fished there. I had walked those paths since I could remember. That night, I learned there were things using those trails that did not belong to us. It was late summer, humid and heavy, the kind of night where the air sticks to your skin. I had taken our 2 dogs, Boone and Daisy, down to the creek for a short walk. Boone was a large shepherd mix, fearless to a fault. Daisy was smaller, but loud, always barking at shadows. They both stopped at the same time. Boone planted his feet and stared into the trees across the creek. Daisy tucked her tail and let out a low whine. I had never seen either of them react like that. "Come on," I said, tugging the leashes. Boone refused to move. The woods across the creek were dark, thicker than usual, like the shadows had weight. Then, I heard breathing. Slow, deep, measured. Something stepped out from behind a tree. At first I saw legs, bent backward, muscled, covered in dark fur. Then the rest of it followed. It stood upright at the edge of the creek, water reflecting faintly off its fur. It was taller than my father, taller than anyone I knew. Its chest was broad and powerful, arms hanging long and heavy at its sides. Its head was canine, but wrong in a way I still struggle to explain. The snout was thick, the jaw heavy, the eyes set forward and locked on me immediately. Boone growled, the Dogman growled back. The sound that came from it felt like it went straight through my bones. Not loud, not wild, controlled. Boone fell silent instantly, ears flattening as if he understood exactly what that sound meant. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming at me to run, but every part of me knowing that sudden movement would be a mistake. The Dogman stepped into the creek. The water parted around its legs. It did not hurry. It did not splash. It walked with balance and intention, eyes never leaving mine. I whispered, "Please." I do not know why. It just came out. The Dogman stopped mid-step. It inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring. I saw its chest expand, muscles shifting beneath thick fur. Its eyes flicked down to Boone, then Daisy, then back to me. Then it turned, its head sharply, toward the woods behind me. I heard something else. Moving, heavy, fast. The Dogman snarled. Not at me. At whatever was coming. It stepped back out of the creek and slammed one clawed hand into a tree. The trunk cracked loudly, bark exploding outward. The sound echoed down the ravine. Then it looked at me one last time. There was no rage in its eyes. There was urgency. It stepped backward into the trees and vanished. I did not wait to understand why. I ran up. I dragged the dogs with me up the trail, heart pounding so hard I thought I would pass out. I did not stop until I saw the lights of our house through the trees. I slammed the door behind us and locked it, collapsing against it with shaking legs. My father came running, asking what was wrong. I could barely speak. The next morning, he went to the creek with me. The tracks were there, large, clawed, deep impressions in the mud, leading out of the woods and into the water. They stopped at the creek's edge on our side. Nothing crossed back. My father stared at them for a long time. Then he looked at me and said something I never expected. "You do not go down there anymore," he said quietly. "Not alone. Not ever." I asked him what it was. He did not answer directly. "All I will say," he said, "is that some things protect their territory. And sometimes, they protect us from something worse." Boone refused to go near the creek after that. Daisy would shake whenever we walked that direction. Years later, the creek trail was closed after several hikers reported being followed. They said the tracks would appear beside theirs in the mud, and then stop, right at the water, as if something stood there, watching them leave, making sure they did.